Please join in. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocky turret clear, the bows bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you. Yes, I'm going to sing this for Senator Larkin, who's dear to all of our hearts, and we miss him, and I know you do. This is one of his favorites. God bless America. Please join in. While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
So before we do anything, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to this Veterans event. But first things first, I would like everybody to stand and let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Before I start, I'd like to say thank you to our host here today, the Newburgh Armory, and to Pat Larkin as one of our speakers, and to Mr. Bill Kaplan, who will be is instrumental in getting this Armory program going. It's a great community resource. I'd like to thank, too, all the veterans. We're here today because Hospice of Orange about 10 years ago started working with our National Association in a conjunction with the Veterans Administration. They created a We Honor Veterans program. And I'm happy to tell you that this year we reached the highest level attainable, level 5, because of the work we do. And one of the key parts of our work was to honor the veterans with a breakfast. So for 2 years in a row, we had breakfasts, and we basically took the veterans out. And That was wonderful. Of course, we couldn't do it this year, so we're doing it virtually. So I'd like to shout out a thank you to all the Legion Post, and veterans groups that are going to be watching this. Thank you for your service. Thank you for everybody here's service who was a veteran. And I will say this, I just want to mention a couple of things about hospice. Thanks to community support. We started in 1988. A few people in the room remember that. And since that time till today, sometime this month, we will serve patient number 25,000. And we have given over 1 million days of care to hospice patients in Orange and Sullivan counties. So we'd like to thank the county and everybody in it for inviting us into their homes and lives and using the resources we provide in both nursing homes and at our wonderful Kaplan Family Hospice residence. The second thing is I would like to thank our staff. Because of their work, for the second year in a row, we've been honored as having one of the hospices as ranked by our families, not by an outside agency, as ranked by families through questionnaires as being in the top 20% of all hospices in the United States. So I'd like to thank our staff for the great job they do on a daily basis. Also, we were ranked through another measure as one of the top 10 hospices in New York State. So again, I owe a lot to a wonderful staff. And I will say this, being the son of 2 veterans, I want to just thank everybody for their service. Service was sort of expected of us in our household, so that's why I do what I do, because of the legacy from my parents. So I would like to honor them too. And then in conclusion, I would just like to say thank you to everybody for your support of Hospice of Orange and Sullivan County, your community hospice. And I would now turn it over to Janice Valentino, our Director of Marketing, and Kim Warner, our Director of Social Work Services.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. The first thing I would like to do is I would like to thank our many sponsors. These sponsors originally had already sponsored our breakfast, and when we had to recreate what we're doing, they absolutely said, absolutely, we will continue to support whatever you're doing. So these are our sponsors. I just want to mention Lakeland Bank is our star sponsor, and they have also sponsored the masks that everybody has, and we will also be giving out to the veterans in our community. And I also would just like to do a shout out to Farmers Insurance, Rob Bowen, and RE/MAX Benchmark Realty, Dan Clarino, for sponsoring our very special pins. So I just want to do a shout out for that. And of course, you have all of our sponsors. So thank you very much for supporting us. This program is called A Salute to Our Veterans. As Dan mentioned, we have reached level 5 of the We Honor Veterans program. And Kim Warner and I are going to explain what this program is, how hard we work to attain this 5-star level, and how it really benefits our veterans, especially the veterans that are in our care, the ones that we take care of at the end of life, and how we recognize them. I would like to introduce Kim Warner, our Director of Bereavement Services and Social Work. Kim.
Thank you, Janice. It's my privilege to be here to get a tour of this armory, to see how substantial it is in the community. We join the community in servicing our veterans here, and we did this as a joint effort. We began our national program in 2011. The National Hospice Association and the National Veteran Association in 2008 decided that most veterans prefer to be in their home at the end of their life, like the rest of the community. And they asked The goal was to have us serve those veterans as specialty population, understanding the needs of the veterans. And so the VA was invested in teaching the hospice community about the veterans, and the hospice community was invested in teaching the VA of what we can do for the veterans. So that started in 2008 in the national level. In 2011, this agency made a commitment to start to learn and integrate our services to the veterans. And the We Honor Veteran program, it's entitled, it's a national program, created certain levels of accreditation and integration of serving the veterans. And so we started that with at level 0. And at this time, we've able to reach level 5, which is the top level, the final level that We Honor Veterans has created. The work of that was instrumental in us being able to understand the needs of the veterans. We have this committee consisted of every element of our agency, our finance team, our technical team, our nursing team, our social work team, our chaplain team, our marketing team, our community outreach team, and created a veteran volunteer group that services the veterans on our program as they are on our program. So it is a huge effort. We're very pleased that we were able to do this. We were asked to, by the credentials, we were asked to have specified veteran trainings set up for our team. So every staff person that's arrived at our agency in the last 5 years have been taught more about the needs of veterans. We've been asked by our accreditations to host cafes in our community. We've been asked by us to have education tables all around the community that talk about us as an organization and what we can do to serve them. And the ultimate privilege is to be able to recognize those who have served our country when they come to our program. Our social workers are instrumental in asking our veterans what their service was, and if we have the privilege to acknowledging them in a recognition, and what kind of recognition would they be most comfortable with. And so they are very much part of designing how our recognition is part of that. So we collaborate in order to do an honor salute, which is something unique to our agency. We collaborate with the Veteran Foreign Wars and for the American Legions, and they all are invested and working with us. As soon as we know someone on our program would like a recognition, we try to make that happen. Janice has worked hard with our community. We have people who are creating blankets of patriotic colors that we can award to our veteran. We have children in schools and in Scouts programs that are creating greeting cards of thanks of service for our veterans. And we have these pins that we have created and sponsored, and actually give them a pin. So the different colors pins, I believe that the veterans get are different than the ones we wear. They are specialty for our veteran. Next slide, please. This recognition program has morphed through the years with the involvement of community people, our involvement of our West Point cadets at one point, involvement of, in one instance, we had family members of that veteran who were also serving in the community to be a part of our recognition. So we also match veterans who are willing to volunteer for our agency as a comrade to our veteran on our program. So they have a unique relationship, as you can imagine, and are able to relate to them in a level that I would never be able to, as much as the training I have received. So we are very happy to enlist veterans of our community who are willing to commit to becoming a volunteer for our agency, and then we match them in visiting with our veteran. usually that veteran volunteer is a part of that recognition and a instrumental part of showing up each week to provide extra companionship. So Janice would like to explain how this whole recognition honor salute began.
In 2015, I was contacted by the Hospice of Chesapeake and the United States Military Academy, West Point, and they talked to me about a program that Chesapeake had been doing with Annapolis. And they started the Honor Salute program there. So they decided, well, let me explain how we ended up with it. One weekend, the cadets were at Annapolis, and they went on an honor salute with them. And when they saw what Annapolis was doing, they decided, we need to do this. And so when they went back to West Point, they spoke to whoever they needed to speak to there and said, we want to do this for our veterans here, and we want to work with our local hospice. So we were called, and we were able to put this program together. It took a while, I'm going to say. The program needed for us to reach out to veteran organizations to get them on board to help us with salutes. We needed to get our patriotic blankets that are very much a part of the recognition, and I needed to go out and speak to many seniors and crafters to get them to do these blankets for us. So it took a community really to come together to really make this program work. In April of 2016, we held our very first honor salute with the United States Military Academy cadets, and that was done at our Kaplan Family Hospice residence, and that was World War II veteran Warren Harris. And this is him right here. About a week later, we did our second salute, and that was done at the Port Jervis home of World War II veteran Walter Hughes. So these were the first kickoff honor salutes that we did, one at our residence and then the next one at home. So that's how it started. The recognitions are individually picked or chosen by the veteran. Every veteran, as Kim said, has their own story. Some of them are very, very embarrassed. They don't want to be recognized. So we, or I should say the social workers, talk with them and try to make them understand that we feel it's very, very important to recognize them. And they choose what level that they're most comfortable with. First level being a private recognition where it's just the social worker who will recognize our veteran. And they are given a certificate of their service. They're given a very special pin. They're given a patriotic blanket. And they're also given a child's card, thanking them for their service. And I have all of these things here up the table we can take a look at later. The second level is the agency, and that is when the entire care team will come and be there for the veteran to be recognized. The third option is our honor salute. And this is when our veteran is recognized, but we also bring in another element, and that element is veterans who will come and salute them. I have seen many of these. There's a number of people in this room that has been a part of them. They are extremely emotional. They're absolutely a wonderful gift, not only to the veteran, but to all of us who are allowed and privileged to honor them. And the reason why this is so important is because hospice is about life. It's about living. It's about quality. And we believe that everyone deserves to have the best quality of life up until the day that they go on their journey. So these salutes are just so very important because these veterans, some of these veterans, they've never even been honored or saluted. So it is a very, very important thing that we do, and we're very, very proud and honored. Next. We continue to establish collaborative efforts with our local veteran organizations to assist in these honor salutes. As Kim mentioned, we did start with the military academy, but then it was important that we reached out to our community to get our veterans involved. So we work with the VFWs, the American Catholic War Heroes, the American Catholic War Veterans, Rolling Thunder, our American Legions, our Marine Corps League, and the Military Order of the Purple Heart. All of these organizations at one time have provided recognitions and salutes. And this is something that is constantly being grown because we want to reach all of the veterans that are in all areas of service. We care for people all over Orange County and Sullivan County. And so when these salutes need to be done, we want to be able to call upon the veterans that live in that area of where that veteran is being cared for. So this is a constant process. It's a constant process. We appreciate our local senior clubs and crafters who continue to provide our patriotic blankets and quilts. Our local schools and clubs, Girl Scouts, Boy Scout clubs, for the thank yous for their service cards that they make for our veterans. This is just a sample of the organizations and the groups that have provided these blankets for us. And these are some of the people that continue to do this for us. Right now, this is very special. We want to invite Patricia Larkin up. Patricia is going to speak of her personal experience with hospice for our beloved Bill. And we also have a video that shows when Senator Larkin got his honor salute. So I welcome Patricia Larkin, wife of Senator Bill Larkin.
At the moment, I'm a little emotional, so just forgive me. It's an honor, basically, for me to be here. And if my husband was here, he would be saying it's an honor to be here also. I'm here to honor and really give praise to the hospice for their salute to veterans. My husband was fortunate enough to have hospice as part of his journey towards the end of life. His team, and I'm going to be very specific so I don't forget anyone this time, Janine, Elizabeth, Vanessa, Tricia, Chloe, and Donna, they became part of our family. When the time came for Bill to be honored at home, they were with our biological family when he was presented his beautiful Afghan, red, white, and blue Afghan. He was honored both for his service to our great country and his service to New York State. He never stopped working. His beautiful handmade Afghan that represents our great country was made. I was looking quickly as I was going through to see, I could see the people who made his, but there's so many people involved that it would be unfair to mention one group. But having it in our home, it's a constant reminder of hospice and its care for veterans and everyone in need. I can't say enough good things about hospice. It filled our life, it really did. They became my social workers, as most hospice workers will know. Caretakers need people around them and to give you a break, even if it was to go weed in my garden. And they took the care. Each one of the women I talked about took the time to listen to my husband. He had a million stories, absolutely a million, as all of you know. But, and he was wonderful. His mind was good to the very end, and he loved talking still. But my deepest, deepest thanks to hospice and its salute to veterans. Having the Catholic War veterans come, a group that he belonged to and was very active with, gave him more time to reminisce. And I thank each of them and each of you for contributing to hospice. Thank you. Hospice has a group of people who come over who have been in the military. And with Bill, the Catholic War vets came over with hospice. And they present him with a quilt that the volunteers make. And it has the colors of the American flag, red, white, and blue, and everyone is different. And they socialize with him. And then they present him this. I think I had one granddaughter there, and she was like, you could see her eyes kept getting bigger and bigger, because nobody knew what to expect. I certainly didn't. And so they present him and they honor him, and honor his service to the country, and make a big deal of it in your final days. And you know, so it's an emotional thing, that you haven't been forgotten, that you're still part of something. And that's what it was for Billy. He was part of these men and these women that were there, saluting him for his service to the country. Oh, the salute he was just overwhelmed with, truly. I mean, he just loved it. We were just so happy to see this group come and talk about things with him and give him this blanket. Well, he never took the Afghan off his body, never. And it's still sitting on his chair. And it was such an honor for him to be honored with people coming from hospice and doing this.
We thank you, Pat, for sharing such an intimate moment with us. It's a privilege for us social workers to introduce the concept of recognition and to offer and arrange to have that happen. Today, we have 23 veterans on our program that are receiving our care. And each of our social workers has offered a recognition. With the pandemic, they've been private. They've been very well received. We've almost run out of blankets. There's so many veterans that are receiving our care and our recognition. So thank you for this opportunity. I turn now to the veterans who have agreed to become a volunteer of our agency. It is one of the most exciting parts for me as one of the leaders of our veteran program is to meet the veterans in our community who are willing to work alongside our agency and support those who are on our program. When we started this, we had tried to devise a job description and kept trying to figure out how to incorporate the veteran volunteer component to our agency. And a gentleman named Paul Rader stepped up. He worked very diligently in devising the veteran-to-veteran program. He worked very diligently in trying to help us understand what a recognition should consist of and how we should emulate that. So he came and walked alongside us and assisted us and helped us develop programming. And he was full of energy and full of ideas, and was at every recognition he could be at for the years that he did that. Sadly, Paul became sick, and he became one of our patients. And I had the honor of recognizing him in an honor salute. Paul's enduring spirit drove me to develop an award for other veteran volunteers that come to our program who are going to commit like he did. Paul was amazing. He was thoughtful, he was honorable, he was silly. He would challenge us to break kind of the concepts of what we thought we could do and couldn't do. He became able to show us what loyalty meant and how the rest of us who are not part of the military experience was able to join. So we decided to thank him. So last year at the breakfast, we created this award and we awarded it to his family who was there representing to us. So this year we had a great privilege to identify another person who is a veteran, who is one of our volunteers, who has worked diligently with us through the challenges of the last years. And so I am very privileged to present this award today to Pete Adams. Let me tell you a little bit about Peter. This man served in the Korean War in the Army as a private in 1953 to 1955. He became a volunteer for our agency before we even had a veteran program in 2011. He was a volunteer at our residence. He was a sitting vigil volunteer and a trainer for those who sat vigil as volunteers. He was a driver helping our families with needs, as bringing people back and forth, bringing items back and forth. Peter visited many, many patients and families in a very humble way. He became active in our committee that was going through level 3 and level 4 and level 5. He has a history that is unparalleled of his commitment. Whenever we asked for understanding of what a veteran needs or how we were going to implement it, he would step up. He was one of our original veteran-to-veteran volunteers. He became a bedside camaraderie model for all of the volunteers that have been able to join us. When we came to level 5, which is just recently, those challenges, we were asked to establish veteran-to-veteran cafes in the assisted living and nursing homes in our region. Pete was the first one to say, I'll figure it out, we'll do it together. He and Janice decided how it would happen, who would be there, how we would recognize the people who would attend. I am just impressed beyond measure of Peter as a humble, quiet leader. He works alongside us, and he is steadfast in making sure that we know that we're on the right road. I am honored when Peter quietly says to me, Kim, that was a good job. That was the right thing to do. And I know that was right because Peter told me so. Peter's character emulates what Paul presented to us: kindness and thoughtfulness, commitment and loyalty, resilience and giving, and passion and service. And so that is why I am very pleased to present this honor to Peter today.
I'm humbled indeed to receive this award named for Paul Rader. Paul was dedicated, forward-looking, and especially intense. He could not tolerate the idea of veterans being left alone in their final journey. He could not tolerate the idea of veterans not being honored for their service. And I am proud to have had a small part in training Paul for hospice, but the energy and dedication that he brought to this work were entirely his. For me, to receive this award is to remember Paul. I will never forget him. Thank you very much.
The award that Peter is taking home today was specifically designed in honor of veteran volunteers for our agency. And it's remarkable to me. I had a teacher of a social worker who was on our program, who worked with me, who was also a veteran, who helped us in the on the opposite side, on the social work side, of how to serve a veteran. And he helped to design this award. So I'm pleased that Peter will be able to take this home and honor. We're glad to have you have that. Okay, what's next?
Now that you've seen what our program is about and how we care for our veterans, it's important for all of us to know that it's never, ever too late to thank a veteran. And so let us take that with us. Let us always respect our veterans. Maybe even just give a little nod, maybe if we're in a store and we see a veteran with his hat on. They are the foundation of this country, and they will always be the reason that we are as great as we are. So for all of those who have fought, for all of those that we have cared for, and for all of those who are fighting today, we thank you, and God bless you.
So this is an appeal from me as the committee chair of our veteran program here at Hospice, that we reach out to the community, to more veterans to join us in our veteran-to-veteran companionship. It has looked different since the pandemic. We are trying to think out of the box to have veterans be a comrade from afar, and how will we make an honor recognition from afar. But we will prevail. Today, here in the building, we have 3 veteran volunteers, in addition to Peter, that are part of our committee, and I'd like to recognize them. So first I want to say Dave Wilcox is here. He has been very vigilant in keeping our American flag right at the residence, and has been very helpful in the cafes. I'd also like to recognize Anna Therese, and Anna has been has some wonderful life experiences of being at bedside with some of our veterans on our program, and I think it has been as fulfilling for her to do that as it has been for me to watch her at playing dominoes with a veteran. And we have Russ. Russ is here. Thank you, Russ, for being our host here and guiding us to having our event here today, and contributing to a better understanding of the honor it is to produce recognitions each time we have that chance. So we are always looking for veterans who want to join us. We have a volunteer department who will train veterans to be part of our volunteer department, and then we uniquely refine that training for the veterans who will be part of our veteran-to-veteran volunteer program. So there's the phone number, and please make sure that you encourage folks to be a part of whatever level they're comfortable helping us. Getting ready for today, we've had veteran volunteers help us assemble our packets. We've had veterans help us assemble the Vietnam pins that are specialty for Vietnam veterans that we award. We've had them going from place to place delivering packets. We have them calling and making phone calls to our veterans. So any level that people are comfortable with doing, we would join you and ask you to come in. So extension 317.
I would like to bring up our Orange County executive veteran, or actual active, right? Steve Newhouse.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It's good to see some fellow veterans here. I see front and center we have Bill Kaplan and the rest of the team. And of course, Mrs. Larkin. We miss your husband every day, and I'm telling you, there's not a day that goes by that we don't talk about him, his impact. He has done so much for our community, and his legacy still lives on. I remember going on the first honor flight with Bill, and you know, I ended up being a caretaker for a guy named Bill Sabella, who was a World War II veteran. He happened to, him and I had a great friendship from that honor flight. He passed away, unfortunately, earlier this year. During the middle of the COVID crisis, but it shows you what a small world it is. About 2 weeks ago, I get called, my one day off. I was going to go into work after lunchtime. 911 calls me and says, "We got a horrific bus accident. You got to get here immediately." So I go to the bus accident. Horrible scene, very difficult. A lot of kids were really, and it ended up being a miracle in the long run. But they had to cut one little girl out of the bus, and she thankfully is home and safe now. But I got a call that night, and they said, "We appreciate you being on the scene." And he goes, "This is Bill Sabella Jr. That was my granddaughter." So it was a great-granddaughter of the guy that I met and had become good friends with, Bill Sabella Sr. on the honor flight. Just shows you what a small world it was. And thankfully, everybody survived that, and especially those little kids. Since being the county executive, I've been asked a number of times to meet privately one-on-one with veterans to talk about their experiences, most of them Vietnam. Most of them had very difficult experiences. I'm not an expert by any means. I'm not a counselor. And it goes to one of Bill Larkin's cliches that he would always talk about was, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, to listen more than talk. And one of those individuals, Bob Shute, passed away earlier this year, Vietnam veteran from the Blooming Grove area, sweetheart. But he had a tough time in Vietnam. And, you know, I talk to his family on a regular basis now, but it really emphasizes the importance of having veteran volunteers in the hospice system. And I will do everything I can to help you guys advocate to get some fellow veterans to get out and talk to fellow veterans, care for them, talk to them. It's always nice to see these hats that see another guy that served in service, and it creates this bond that we've always had between us. So I think it's critically important. And then I know we have Jim DeFelice coming up here soon. I met him a few years ago. I have a number of veterans that work for me. I know he's friends with one of them in particular that we had lunch with to help tell their story. So it's really critical. And I'll say one thing, Mary Kay, I don't even know what position you have anymore. Every time I talk to you, you have a new you have a new promotion, and definitely well deserved, because you are just you are a fixture in our community, and you bring us all together. Every time you speak, and I see you looking at everybody, making sure they're talking, some less, some lower than others, but making sure that we're doing this as a team, because this is a great country. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be part of this family and this team, and thank you to everybody for doing what you're doing, and do whatever you can to support hospice. It is a critical part of our fabric that makes our community so great. So have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for your leadership in this county with the COVID that we've been going through. You've just been remarkable, and we thank you for that. Well, I'm very, very happy to introduce to you our guest speaker. He is a 15-time New York Times best-selling author, and he is also a screenwriter, Mr. Jim DeFelice. A masterful storyteller, Jim is known for his vivid, raw, and powerful portrayals of modern American military heroes. From Navy SEAL Chris Kyle's iconic memoir, American Sniper, to his biography of America's last five-star general, Omar Bradley, General at War. Please give a hand to Mr. Jim DeFelice.
Well, thank you. First of all, you're very, very brave to give a microphone to somebody that writes novels and very long books. So, I may just go on and on. So to kind of keep me kind of honest, I have a little timer there. We'll just keep that. Can I move this around? Am I allowed to wrench it out? Because I like to be able to move. Do we have decent levels? That's what they always ask. Do we have good levels? I don't really know what that means, but apparently it's very important. I don't know who that fellow with the tie is. I don't really recognize him, but maybe my wife, I doubt my wife does actually. But thank you very much for having me here. And I have to say that it's not true that I only came because I always go places where I get free breakfast. That's absolutely not true. Free coffee, that's why I go. But my family happens to have had some very close and good experiences with hospice. A few years back, my father-in-law, who was a veteran, he was a Marine in Korea during the war, and actually most of his service there, to hear him say, was very uneventful, except for about 10 minutes when they were on the road and they realized that those fellows in front of them were actually Chinese and North Korean. And that was an exciting 10 minutes, but otherwise, as far as Marine involvement goes, he said that it was very boring. But unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, and towards the very end, my wife and the rest of her sisters and mother were assisted very much by hospice organization there. We're very, very grateful. And they helped make his final hours very peaceful. And earlier this year, my mom, who had been suffering from cancer for about a year, was coming down kind of towards the end. And we realized it, and we were very fortunate in that we had a little bit of time to prepare. But what we hadn't been able to prepare for or even think about was the pandemic. And of course, that made things very, very difficult. And fortunately for us, there was a hospice organization. And they were incredible in terms of, we told them basically that we didn't want a lot of help, but we wanted assistance to make sure that she would be able to pass away at home. And they did that. And they were remarkably helpful in terms of not just making sure that all the medication and all the nursing care and everything else was lined up, but also in doing other things like making sure that my dad had help at different times, just to clean the house, to just check on my mom, and to kind of relieve him of the responsibility 24/7 of that. And they were really, really great. And because of their help, we were able to say goodbye to my mother, as many of the family as could be there when she passed away. And then, and she passed away at home. Had she gone to the hospital, of course, we wouldn't have been there. And we didn't want that to happen. And it didn't, thanks to hospice. But, I have to mention one thing. My dad, another veteran, Navy, by the way, he was reluctant. He didn't really want hospice. He didn't want help. He said he didn't want assistance. And I can kind of understand that, and I see that. I hear that from a lot of veterans, a lot of guys mostly, but a lot of veterans, and I think that they misunderstand that they're not, what they're getting is not, as my good friend Chris used to say, veterans aren't asking for a handout. They're not getting a handout. You're not getting a handout from hospice. You're getting a hand up or a helping hand, a little assistance, which we all can use at a time. And as I explained it to my dad, hospice is part of the team, and you understand having been in the military and the Navy, and that everybody has to work as part of a team. And he very, very reluctantly agreed, but as the weeks went by, he started flirting with the nurses. So I knew that he had changed his mind about hospice. But I mentioned Chris, and Chris Kyle had a great attitude about different things, and he would always on something, if we had to do something, he'd say, come on, let's just get it done. And to me, that became kind of a veteran's, saying, let's get it done. Let's go and let's get it done. Let's do it. And I ended up using that on my dad. And I think he said something like, yeah, well, he was a SEAL. What the hell does he know? These aviation guys, they're tough cookies. They won't even take it from SEALs. But now, the thing about Chris, though, to talk a little bit about him, because a lot of people want to know about American Sniper and what this great, huge hero, this Bradley Cooper kind of hero, for all times was like. And they think that, well, he must have been 7 foot tall. He was very tall, but not quite 7 feet, and very, strong, kind of Superman kind of guy. And he wasn't. Chris was just a regular guy. He was a superstar on the battlefield, no doubt. And shooting a gun with him, I mean, he could hit things I couldn't see with binoculars. He could just shoot it with iron sights. I mean, he was that good. But in regular life, he was just a normal, regular, everyday guy. And we would, when we were working on the book, nobody knew who he was. He wasn't American Sniper. He was just Chris Kyle. He was just Chris. And at that time, before I did the book, we could actually go out to bars together and have him pay, and nobody would bother us, which was always super. But to really kind of sum up, I think to sum up Chris's character, one time, this is after the book came out, so he's not just Chris Kyle anymore, he's American Sniper. And everywhere he goes, people are fawning over him, and they're buying him drinks now. He's never paying. And I give him a call, and I forget, we may have been working on a project, or I might just have been calling to check in with him, or probably to rib him about how terrible Dallas had played the week before, because that was Chris's really one big character flaw. He was a Dallas Cowboy fan. And I guess that was because he's from Dallas, but I would never let him hear the end of it if they lost to the Giants. If it went the other way, my phone was off for the whole week. But I called up Chris and I said, "Hey man, what's going on?" So he said, "Hey, I can't talk to you right now. We had a big windstorm last night, and I'm cutting up some trees." And I'm like, "You don't have any trees in your front yard, bro. What's going on?" He said, No. We're driving around. What Chris was doing is they're driving around the neighborhood, clearing up driveways and front lawns. He had recruited a friend of his, and that's really Chris Kyle. That's who Chris was. He's just a regular, everyday guy who got her done, and just had this great attitude about helping people. And frankly, not only did I learn a lot from him, but I was actually jealous that day because, as somebody with 3 chainsaws, I just wanted to jump in my car and get down there. But that was kind of his veteran's attitude, or military attitude. Now, after he left the military, his veteran's attitude, let's get her done. But it's an attitude that I see, and I've been privileged to hear from a lot of other veterans, a lot of other military members. I did a book that came out earlier this year with a man named Henry Langriher, and we called it, as a matter of fact, Whatever It Took. And that was kind of Henry's big saying, because he ended up doing whatever it took. Now, the thing about Henry was in World War II, and he was just a kid on D-Day, which was pretty handy because on D-Day he was at about, I think it was a little bit after 1 o'clock, he was floating down into some artillery and machine gun fire in Normandy, France. And for the next month or so, he got her done and did whatever it took to stay alive, and in the process learned a lot about the horrors of war. Then unfortunately for Henry, he was shot, or actually he was hit by some shrapnel, and he was captured by the Germans. And then his real education in the horrors of war kind of went on and continued. He ended up in a prison camp, was put to work in a coal mine, and eventually decided that the only way he was going to live was to escape. And he spent 2 weeks trying to go west and get back to the Allied lines, and in the process ended up wounding or killing a number of Germans, and really went through some of the worst things that we can imagine that you have to go through in war. And then he came home, and he just literally, when he came home, he walked off the train. Now Henry, who's still with us, by the way, and Henry and I talk every week or so, and he got off the train in his small town, and he walked about 2 miles to home. He walked in the house. It's a little It's a small little, very, very, very modest house. His family was very poor. And Mom said, "Hi, Henry, how you doing? And what do you want for dinner?" That was it. It was just matter of fact. And that, in a way, is really how Henry took life. He and his wife, or he and his girlfriend, Arlene, who had been faithful the entire year that he was gone, even when he was missing in action, even when he was a prisoner and no one knew where he was, they got married and they built their first house. And Henry realized that he liked building things. And so he devoted the rest of his life to building, construction company, and building municipal buildings, factories, but most of all, the things that he really, really liked was building schools. He liked the fact that he was making places where people could learn and where the future of America could be made. And he had that attitude, he had that veteran's attitude, that American attitude, really. Let's get her done. Well, speaking of World War II, I did another book, recently did another book with another friend of mine, Ray Lambert. It's called Every Man a Hero. And Ray's an interesting character. Ray is definitely a character. And I have to say that I can't complain about his football team because he follows college sports, and we actually both agree that Notre Dame is pretty decent, so I really can't bug him about that. But Ray is about to have his 100th birthday, and he is still charging around, and until the pandemic was still driving, and drives almost every morning to McDonald's, where he meets his friends and has coffee. And we would go a couple of times. And I asked Henry, what is it about McDonald's that you really like? I mean, there's a diner where Henry knows everybody in town. So-and-so's diner that's good, and such and such. And so, no. We go to McDonald's because of the senior coffee. You should try it yourself. It's much better than the other regular coffee. Well, what's the difference, Henry? It's a quarter. I don't know. But now the thing about Henry, I have to talk a little bit. Talk a little bit about Ray. Actually, Ray really was a hero, and all of these guys that I'm talking about, from Chris to Henry and especially Ray, do not want to be called heroes, and in their minds, they're not. That they were just doing what they had to do. They just said to themselves, let's get her done, and they got her done. But Ray, they all have claimed to have been a hero. And Ray especially had 2 silver stars before D-Day. You see, he was in the invasion in Africa, Torch, at the very beginning of the American involvement of the war. And he was a medic, and he saved countless lives. A few German lives, by the way, as well as mostly Americans. He had 2 silver stars, and America was building up for D-Day. And he had met a few times another fellow, coincidentally, that I've done a bit of writing on, Omar Bradley. And Bradley was very impressed. Bradley had pinned the second, I think it was the second silver star on him. And Bradley was very impressed with Ray and with his unit and the jobs that he had done. And he wanted to give him a promotion. So they're in England, and he has Chet Hansen, who's one of Bradley's main kind of right-hand guys. Bring him in, and the general gives him the whole, general spiel and builds him up the way only I think at the time he was a 3-star, but only a very high-ranking general can build you up. If you're an enlisted man, even if you're a staff sergeant at that time, you do know it's bullshit, right? But it does. You start lifting up, and but Ray being Ray, he knew there was something coming. So he's waiting. What's it going to be? What's it going to be? I know he's not going to hit me up for a donation to his daughter's club or something. I'm not going to be here to buy Girl Scout cookies. What's coming? And the general said, how would you like to be? We have a special program for NCOs to become officers. And that was a pet program of Bradley. Bradley had been instrumental in getting it started. And Ray stands there, looks at his shoes, and then looks up at the general and said, will I be court-martialed if I refuse? Bradley's, well, I guess I could order you to take a promotion. So, well, if it's not an order, General, and even if it is, I don't want the promotion. So, of course, there's a lot of fumarole, and, Chet leads Ray out of the office and says, what? This is in London, and brings him into a little corner. What's going on? Why are you refusing to be an officer? And Ray very calmly explained that if he became an officer, number one, he'd have to go back to the States, and so he would miss the invasion. Number two, he would have to leave his men because the only officers in the medical corps at the time were doctors. And so that meant that he wouldn't be with his men in the biggest battle of the war, and he couldn't join them afterwards either. So he wasn't court-martialed, and he did get into D-Day. As a matter of fact, he was in the first wave, and as a matter of fact, he was in the front of the landing craft, and as a matter of fact, he was the first guy off the boat. He was also the first guy that got hit off the boat, because he was hit almost immediately as he went into the water. Somehow he struggled to the beach. So Ray was the first one off the boat, first one off the landing craft, hit immediately. Wounded, makes it to the beach. There really is no shelter. I don't know if you've seen, now what's that great movie on D-Day with Saving Private Ryan? Yeah, that sounds a little familiar. Well, you know what? Private Ryan was here. Ray was right here. Okay? Probably could spit at him. He makes it to the beach, and the only thing that's on the beach for shelter was a big piece of aggregate concrete that had been left over as the Germans were building the defenses there. And that became kind of their rallying point for the wounded, as the medics would come in and they would leave them behind the rock, and very quickly that piled up. And Ray kept going back and forth, mostly into the water to help drowning people, but also to help people who had been wounded. Until finally he was wounded again, and he just couldn't go on. He'd lost so much blood, and one of his corporals was there, and he said, I know I can't go on. I cannot do it. This is it for me. I'm just going to lay down. You have to take over and lead the men. We need a regular aid station. The surgeon will be in soon. Set it up over there. And the corporal said, absolutely, you got it, Ray. Don't worry about it. Totally under control. Stood up from behind the rock and was immediately shot through the head by a German sniper. Fell on top of Ray. Ray kept going. He knew he had to do it. Now he knew he had to do it. He had that let's get her done somehow, some way. Let's get her done. He heard someone drowning out in the water. By now it's the 4th or 5th wave, maybe the 6th, and the water has come up, and he starts to swim out to that person. He grabs him, and he starts back, but he's very, very tired by now. He's lost a lot of blood. It's been a very exhausting day. And just as they're pretty much getting to the beach, to the shelf where they're going to be able to stand up, not quite. A landing craft comes and lowers its ramp right on both of them. And for the first time that day, and the first time in the entire war, Ray knew he was going to die. Now, Ray had fought off a German soldier with a bayonet, who was trying to bayonet him and killed the man. Ray had rescued a couple of men in minefields, had pulled men from burning tanks. But this was the first and only time in that war he knew he was dead. He knew he was dead, and he thought, well, there's a couple of different versions of what he thought, but the accepted version, with all the curse words removed, was that, God, just let me get this one guy to the beach, and and then you can have me. That's it. That's it. Somehow, at that moment, or a few moments later, the landing craft raised its ramp and backed out without having dropped off any men there. And we don't know why that happened that way or what was going on. But Ray popped up to the surface, grabbed the guy he was with, dragged him to the rock, and passed out. The next thing he knew, he was on his way back to England and to a rescue, to go to a hospital. Ray also had a homecoming, although his was a little bit more extended than Henry's because he had to rehabilitate. He had broken his back and had some other injuries. But he too, after the war, decided, I got to get on with things. I have to get it done. I have to keep going. And so he and his wife moved to Boston to be with his brother, who had also been a medic and also was in the war. And he, too, started a company. It was an electrical contracting company. He invented stuff, and he quote-unquote retired when he was about 80, but is still active. And, last year was bragging about his friend's backhoe, which he had borrowed to dig a hole in the community, some sort of community playground, and he did all the work at 90, was that 98, 90, 99? It's crazy. That's who he is. It's veteran's attitude. Let's get it done. But there's also other veterans that we don't always talk about and we don't always honor. And go back to Chris for a second. The truth is, I wasn't actually going to originally write Sniper. I got a call one day from one of my editors, and he said, "Hey, listen, do you know who Chris Kyle was?" And I said, "I don't really know who Chris was. I know a lot of SEALs, but I don't know Chris." And he said, "Oh, he's the guy that he had X number of sniper kills." And I said, "Oh, I know who you're talking about, but I don't know Chris." He goes, "Well, listen, I want him to do a book. Would you be interested in doing the book?" The truth is, I wasn't, because I had a whole bunch of other things going on. I was working on a video game. I was supposed to do travel overseas and actually stay there for a little while, and just the whole mess of stuff. But this guy, you don't turn down a high-level editor just cold like that. You have to be polite. You have to come up with a good reason to turn them down. And so I said, well, you know what? Why don't I talk to him? Why don't I talk? I got a lot of stuff going on. Let me talk to Chris. And so I talked to Chris, and I would say within 30 seconds, I was absolutely going to do the book, and I would have done it. And I can say this because my editor's not here. I would have done it for free, because he wanted to do the book not for himself. As his wife Taya says, he would be happy if a book came out and there were 2 copies in the back of, dusty copies in the back of a library. He would have been happy. He wouldn't have cared. But what he was interested in doing was honoring his teammates and his friends and the 2 men who had died under his command. And so it's hard to turn somebody down when they're talking about that. And so we worked it out so we would be able to do that. Unfortunately, a lot of other things happened along the way, but That was the original intent. And I told Chris I had 2 conditions. Condition 1 was that he had to be utterly, totally honest and truthful with me. He said, no shit. I went, why? It's like, well, okay, that's a good start. That's a good start. And the other thing is that I don't want to just write about you, Chris. I want to write about what your family went through, because their service is, in a lot of ways, as demanding. It may not be as dangerous as yours, but it was certainly very demanding. And the families, you give a blank check, the service people give blank checks to our country that may or may not be cashed. Hopefully don't have to be cashed. But you voluntarily now sign up for service. In most cases, the families don't sign up voluntarily. They're just kind of there for the ride. So I want to include that part of the story because I think it's very important. Chris said, hell yeah, that's right. I can't do a Texas accent, thank God. But, and so that's why we did the book. So to add to that veteran's attitude, it was not that I've seen, not just in Chris, and not just in Ray, and not just in Henry, but pretty much in all of the people that I've had the privilege of either writing with, working with, or just even just listening to. They have an attitude of getting things done, but they also understand what values are important. Family, community, helping others, and moving ahead and moving along. And that's one reason why America has not only endured for 200 plus years, but that it's also prospered. Because veterans have been, from the Revolutionary War, have got her done, have aided our communities, have built families, and have kept moving forward. You know, ordinarily, when I do a big speeching thing, when I wear one of those weird things, you know, around your neck, I ask all the veterans to stand up and be recognized, and we try to embarrass them in front of, you know, it's a lot of fun embarrassing them in front of 5,000 people, believe me. But you know, now we're in kind of weird times, so unfortunately, I don't get to do that. I can just rather than embarrassing everyone in the audience and online, I want to thank you sincerely, not just for keeping my family safe, because you do. You've all done that, either directly or indirectly, but also for helping our communities and keeping America strong in many different ways once you left or once you leave the service. Because those contributions are just as important in many ways as what you did on the battlefield or what you supported on the battlefield. All right. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you, Hospice.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. We really appreciate you coming and speaking to us and supporting our program. Take your coffee. This concludes our salute to our veteran program, and I thank everyone for coming and for being a part of it. And Mr. Kaplan, I certainly thank you for giving us the most perfect place to hold it, the Pat and Bill Larkin Center here. So thank you so much, and thank you all for your service.